Okay, sir.
Now you let everybody in that you want to, and then share the live stream video with all those who can't join so that they don't miss out on this.
Okay.
The limit is 100 participants, no? So add everybody. And then after that, post that YouTube live link on the group.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Now I'm unmuted.
Yes, sir. Shreya, can we start now?
Good evening,
Yes,
sir.
Hi, Rekha.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Shreya.
Hi, sir. I'll be starting now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
A very good evening to respected Principal, Sir Dr. Ajay Patil, our guest for today, Mr. Julio Ribeiro, Sir, Assistant Registrar, Mrs. Asha Patil, Madam, all dignitaries and students. I am Shreya Yadav, PCGT Campus Ambassador at Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Law. Along with Ayush Ramesh, we both welcome you all to this webinar on police reforms organized by Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Law, Nerul, in association with Public Concern for Governance Trust and Burnished Law Journal. Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Law is an institution dedicated to enhancing the quality of advocacy and providing students with a platform to develop the abilities essential for the present and future leadership in law. This has been made possible year after year through the dedicated efforts of our respected principal, Dr. Ajay Patil, sir. Sir has not only encouraged us but also guided us in all our endeavors. Public Concern for Governance Trust is a registered trust founded in 2002 by Mr. Julio Ribeiro, Dr. R.K. Anand, and late Mr. B.G. Deshmukh to increase public participation and activism towards creating a more transparent and efficient governance system. In order to sensitize and mentor the youth in ethical values with an emphasis on good governance, PCGT started the Youth for Governance program in 2012. I would like to request Devash to please proceed with introducing us with Burnished Law Journal.
Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you. I am Devarshi Malviya, marketing head at Burnished Law Journal. I am really seeing on police reforms as a great opportunity to learn. On behalf of Burnished Law Journal, I welcome Mr. J.F. Ribeiro, sir, Chairman PCGT and former Commissioner of Mumbai Police, all the staff of Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Law, Mumbai. I hope everyone will find it knowledgeable and worthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Devash. Our speaker for today, Mr. Julio Ribeiro, joined the Indian Police Service in 1953 and rose to be the Commissioner of Police, Mumbai. He served in quick succession as the Director General, Central Reserve Police Force, Director General of Police Gujarat, Special Secretary to the Government of India's Home Ministry, Director General of Police Punjab, and finally, Advisor to the Governor of Punjab. Amongst other awards, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 1987. Post-retirement, Sir was appointed as the ambassador to Romania, where he served for 4 years from 1989 to 1993. The then Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee offered him the office of the Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, but Sir declined it due to his involvement in social work in his native city of Bombay. Sir is the founding trustee and chairman of the Public Concern for Governance Trust and also heads the Mohalla Ekta Committee, which works for communal harmony. We thank you, sir, for taking out the time to address our students today. Before we proceed, I just have a few instructions which I would request all our participants to follow. Please keep your videos off and your mics mute at all times. We'll be taking in your questions towards the end of Sir's session, so you can, start sending them in the chat box as in when you come up with it. And over to you, sir.
Thank you. What?
The hosts are requested to mute everybody who is
Speak now. Shall I start?
Sure, sir,
Yes,
you
sir.
are
Okay.
audible.
Well, as mentioned by Shreya, I am the chairman of PCGT, the Public Concern for Governance Trust. We work with students mostly right through the year, and that is making us extremely happy because I like to work with young people, and I'm happy to address you. Why I chose this subject of police reforms is because a lot of misconception of what reforms means. For example, there is always talk of police being very brutal, very cruel, very rude, very insolent. All that is true. You'll get many examples, not only from India but even from abroad. You have seen in US what happened with Floyd, uh, that case of the black man who was George Floyd, and the reaction to it. I incidentally, I also hope there's a reaction to the killing of the father and son in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, and that some movement starts because of that. The movement should be that police should give up all forms of brutality and also torture in police custody. So, in custodial arrests, there should be no talk of torture. So this is one of the things I hope happens. But let me first tell you about police reforms. What exactly is the important underlying idea or concept of police reform? You know, my friend uh, Prakash Singh, he was the DG of UP, DG of BSF, DGP of Assam. He's a very old friend of mine, 5 years junior, 5 or 6 years junior to me in service. But we have become good friends over the years, though he was in UP and in the north mainly, and I am here in the west coast. I was allotted to the state of Maharashtra. Later on, I went to the Punjab. There also, I met Mr. Prakash Singh. I've been in touch with him nearly every month on the phone. But lately, because of this lockdown, we haven't had that contact. But I've often told him, and I'm going to tell you all also now, that though I headed one committee on police reforms, after the police commission had given its report and after the Supreme Court had ruled on the PIL filed by Mr. Prakash Singh that the following things should be done. I told him very clearly that I felt that it would not be done, that all the parties in power are not going to allow it. They don't want to get rid of the police. They're out of that grip. They would like to, in fact, run the police force. Just imagine the army being run by politicians. We would lose every war that we fought. We perhaps would not be able to fight more than one war. We would have been subjects to some other nation. But here, the police are losing battles on the streets of our cities every day. We get such a bad reputation of being a cruel, unconcerned, rude. All that are the epithets who hurled at us. But can this be corrected? And what are the reforms that are required? A lot of people feel that training is what is required. Train them. Look, we do a lot of training. The type of training that was done during my time when I joined in 1953 was peanuts to what is being done now. Managerial inputs, all sorts of things are taught to them. But value system is not what is taught. And the selection of people is all with the processes known. It's a difficult exam. It's a competitive exam. It's not passing and failing, but coming within the number of vacancies. All that is true. Only the brightest can go into the police service. There are a lot of IAS officers who have come to the IAS via the IPS. They did a couple of years in the IPS and then came over because they reappeared and got a few more marks. The difference in marks is just a few marks makes all the difference. But that is not what I want to talk to you about. What I want to talk to you about is what is police reforms? What do we mean by police reforms? It does not mean training, trying to be more pleasant to the people, trying to be more popular. That is not what the police should be. The police has a deprivational role. It has to arrest people if they disregard the laws. The laws of the land have to be respected. And so the police have a very difficult role. But even that I'm not talking about. What I will talk about today is the gist of police reforms, and that is the depoliticization of the police. The police has to be depoliticized. It has to be taken away from political control, not in regular, in every day, but because only on the point of operation.
Leave केमती करबी
What is that? Can you please mute your? Yeah. So you have to depoliticize the police. Now I will explain to you what this means. I'll tell you about two terrible things that happened in the last, last 3-4 decades. In 1984, we'll start from there because then you will understand what I mean. In 1984, there were riots in Delhi. You know about those riots. They were anti-Sikh riots. We call them anti-Sikh. And lots of Sikhs were massacred. You know about that. Now, what happened was Indira Gandhi was assassinated by one of her own Sikh guards. And as a riposte, people rose up and they went mad with rage. But the point is, could that have been controlled? I mean, I won't say that it would have been totally stopped, but could it have been controlled? Well, if the politicians did not interfere, the control would have been much greater. I do admit that in Delhi, people did lose their jobs because they didn't do it properly. I know the commissioner of police at that time. He was a very good man and he was a year senior to me. But when I was in the ministry, he had come to see me to tell me, what do I do now? I mean, I'm being blamed for all this, but how can I be blamed? So I felt sorry for him. But the fact remains that the politicians have more hand in harming people in this way, in politicizing the police than what should be normally possible. Now, the Congress was in power at that time in Delhi, and Mr. Rajiv Gandhi had just been brought in as the prime minister. He was, in fact, a person who did not want to join politics. He wanted to be a pilot, and he was a pilot in Air India, but Indian Airlines rather, and he then was put into this role, and he was bothered about his mother's funeral and other things, and this rioting took place. Finally, his own cousin, who was the intelligence chief at that time, lost his job because of this. So there were some people who were punished because of that, but it was not highlighted in the press. Whereas in 2002, you had the Gujarat riots. Now, what happened was a whole train carrying car sevaks returning from Ayodhya. They were torched and they were burned to death. How that happened, etc., is still not very clear. But some people have been punished for it. Probably people staying near the Fata, which I think is correct. The people staying near the Fata. But we are not on that topic as to who did it and all that. But as soon as that happened, the first thing that the police should have done is to see that the bodies were not sent to Ahmedabad, that it should not, that the people who might have reacted in a violent manner were put under control and checked, and that there would be clear instructions to the police to do their duty under the constitution and the law to see that as far as possible no murder, no death should occur further. And that was not done. It was clearly a point where probably the party in power was also quite overcome by what had happened in Godhra, and they thought that it would be all right if there was repercussions. It is a normal thing, they said, for one day. If it happened, it happened. But these things never happen for one day. They go on, and it causes a very big problem in the country. Now, these are two instances where I showed you, one the Congress, one the BJP. They were in power in these two places. And the police did not do their duty according to what was expected by the people. Fortunately, in Delhi, I can say that there were people who do their duty, uh, and they were afterwards praised by the press and others. Amod Kant, for instance, he later became the CP of Delhi, and I think he did a very good job, and so did that boy, I forget now his name. Sometimes names don't come to me very fast, but I know he's from Mangalore, and I know him very well, and he did a good job, and there were books written, and they were praised. But in Gujarat, unfortunately, those who did good jobs had to afterwards, some of them had to leave. For instance, Mr. Sharma, an excellent officer who was later on forced by himself. I mean, he just had to resign. But in his charge, the deaths were reduced, probably showing that deaths should have been much more. I mean, this is how we would interpret it. Now, a funny thing happened during the Gujarat riots. For the first time in the history of the police, two ministers sat in our control rooms. There are two control rooms, one of the commissioner of police for the city and one of the DGP for the rest of the state. And in each of these control rooms, one minister sat, which was a very ominous sign that what the government wanted was different from what the police would normally have done. The police would have controlled those riots. There would be deaths, I agree, but they would have been minimum. But that didn't happen. So you have to understand that this politicization, that is the control of the political party in power over the police, has to be weakened. Now, how do we do that? The Police Reforms Committee, the Police Commission, did reflect on this and said, look, the politicization of the police is taking place slowly, and it is not a good thing to happen. And what we should do is to ensure that the police chiefs, that the leadership is the leader, police leader should be one whom people respect, who is absolutely above partisan politics, who does not take sides, who does his duty according to law, according to what is ordained in the Indian Penal Code, in the Criminal Procedure Code, in the Evidence Act, and of course in the Constitution to which he has sworn. You know, many politicians tell people, look, if this is done, if the police is taken out of the control of the political leadership, there will be a lot of problems. Of course, we do agree that there is some corruption even now with the politicians when they assign people to certain posts. But if we go out, the police leaders who have the same powers will fill up our place as far as corruption is concerned. I don't agree with that at all. I know many police officers who are not who are not involved in corruption. There are in every state. In the state of Maharashtra, I can name them. I can name them. They are at the top, and they are available for doing their duty according to law. And these are the people who should be chosen. Now, who chooses the police leaders? It is the party in power which does that. It just chooses according to their wish for different reasons, mainly that they will do what the political party in power wants it to do if it is politically expedient. But that is not what the police is supposed to do. It's not what they are trained for. They are supposed to follow the law, enforce the law according to what is written in the statute books and in the Constitution of India. But they don't do it. And why don't they do it? Is because the power of appointments and transfers, which are now in the hands of the politicians, are misused in order to see that the police leaders are all waiting to serve the party in power for their own uh, for their own ends. I mean, for their own career benefits. Now, this is where the police reforms comes in. The police reforms suggested by the commission and upheld by so many committees that have come, including the Soli Sorabji committee, which revised the Police Act. The Police Act was made in 1860 after the 1857 mutiny, but it was meant to keep the colonial hold over the people. But here, this Police Act, which is now to be revised, which should be revised, but is not being revised, will put the people in charge. No police force can be independent. It has to be controlled. It has to be accountable. That is understood. But that does not mean that it should be used by the party in power for its own political ends, which is what is happening today, what has happened yesterday. Now, let me tell you, when I joined service in 1953, I had a years of, till the end of 54, we were under training. First with the police academy, then with the army for 2 months. Then on the 1st of January 1955, I was posted to a district called Bharuch, which is now in Gujarat. That time it was the old Bombay state, so it was a composite state. And there I had a boss called Mr. Nagarkar, Vasant Vinayak Nagarkar. And he told me, Ribeiro, please remember that if any politician tries to influence you about posting of inspectors and people below that, resist it. Don't agree, even if that means that you will be shunted out. The police, the politician could not touch those people below a certain rank, below the rank of DYSP. They could only post IPS officers, that is ASPs and above. And that would remain with them. It is with them even today. What they do is they choose the persons which never happened earlier. In my days, it didn't happen. Even the senior officers' postings, which was the prerogative of the government, that is the party in power, was always done very carefully, and on the advice of the Inspector General of Police. There was no DGP at that time. It was the Inspector General, just one. And he used to advise the government. He used to send his recommendation to the Home Secretary, who was an IAS or at that time ICS officers, and they in turn would accept what the professional man had recommended, and that would go to the Home Minister or the Chief Minister, both of them, and they would agree. And I saw very few cases where they would disagree, and that also with reasons. They would discuss it with the chief and say, look, these are the reasons why we don't want this man there. Now, what was the role of the politician at that time? The politician was elected by the people. He represented the people, and he had his eyes and ears to the ground. And if there were And if, I'm sorry, there was some disturbance. So if they, the politician uh, heard some complaints about certain officers, senior or junior, he would bring it to the notice of the SP, of the IG at the appropriate level. If it was a senior officer who was in charge of a district, those complaints would be given to the IG. And if it was of a lower rank of an inspector or sub-inspector, then it would be given to the SP. And they were supposed to correct that because the person, the minister, he thought, which very correctly, that it was his job to see that the police did not uh, uh, cross any boundaries, that they did not uh, make, you know, make bad use of the powers given to them by law. They had to do it for the good of the people by ensuring justice. That was because the police is the first step, first point in the judicial process system. After that, it goes to the lawyers and to the prosecutors and to the judges and to the jailers. That is later. But the first point in the judicial process system is the police. And the politicians, the home minister, the chief minister, and other ministers, and the MLAs also, they ensured that the police did not cross the lines. That was their role, and that is their should be their roles even today. That is what the people expect. People want justice. How do you get justice? Now, if the person uh, who is appointed as the DGP or the commissioner of police or the superintendent of police of a district is a straightforward person, not corrupt, who looks to the good of the people, who gives justice, people are happy. I know it. I've seen it everywhere. I know even today, the officers who do that are greatly respected and they are praised. And people tell you, so and so is the person whom we respect and who does this job. And these are the persons who should be posted at very critical at critical positions which make a difference to the people's uh, security system. So if it doesn't happen, then the government, the people who are appointing have done a bad job. So the Police Reforms Committee and the Supreme Court ordered that there should be a commission to appoint the senior levels, and that after the appointments are made, they would get 2 years at least in that post, and they could not be shifted out. But the government has disrespected this by changing the laws, by ensuring that only those whom they have confidence in, who are going to do whatever they want, are appointed. Sometimes we get a very good person also. I don't say here today we have got good people as a very good person as DGP, but then his voice should matter. Now I'll tell you, one day I, as the president also of the Mohalla committee, which works for communal harmony, got many complaints about a certain inspector in Mumbai city. So I phoned the police commissioner, whom I knew very well. He was a good man. And he said, yes, sir, I know. I agree with you. He's a bad fellow. Then I said, what are you doing about it? Why don't you shift him out? Why don't you discipline him? He said, I have written to the government. I said, what? You have written to the government? You can't even discipline an inspector? How do you function if you can't do that? I mean, anybody working under you at that level should be afraid of you, should know that if you do this and that, he will not be able to survive. That if he does this and A, B, C, which is what you expect him to do, he will be rewarded. This is how it should be. Now take the case of the army. If there is a war and if the politicians are going to appoint people to this post and that post, this battalion and that battalion, we will lose all wars. You just think about it. But here in the police, the politicians post these people as inspectors of police stations, which the commissioner is supposed to do or the SP is supposed to do, and yet they allow the politicians to have their say, and you lose every battle on the street every day. And this is the problem that is happening to the police. Why can the police not deliver the goods as expected by the people? Why can't they not be polite? And why can't they catch the culprit when he is guilty and not let off people if they are if they are guilty? But catch the wrong people sometimes who are not guilty, and that done according to either corrupt motive or because the politician in power has wanted you to do that. Well, this is the problem that we have to face. And I wanted to talk about this subject. In fact, I have asked Shivam to please uh, uh, arrange this talk by me so that the students would know what exactly is required. If you want a good security system where people feel safe, you must have a good leadership in the police. And good leadership in the police is how are they chosen? When people who are, everybody knows, is a person who's looking after his own interests and not that of the people, is made commissioner of police or DGP or SP of a district. Well, people know. People are not foolish. What do they do about it? That is the problem of police reform. And if you give it through the courts, like now the court has given an order, it has not been implemented. They find ways of circumventing it. I remember Anna Hazare going on fast in here in Azad Maidan. And then they made a promise to him that we will change the law to ensure that people are not unnecessarily shifted and transferred. We'll make the rules about it. And Anna, poor man, accepted that at the word and he gave up his fast. And very soon they made a law as promised to him. But the law was all on their side. With the result that if there was a police inspector who was creating havoc, the commissioner was not able to even shift him out, was not able to discipline that man. And he used to do whatever he liked because you had to go to the government and the government would tolerate his nonsense if he was a favorite of theirs. Now, this is not how governance should be conducted. This is what I wanted to explain to all of you, and it is better if you all understand it and you spread this word, that so that people will know what exactly police reforms is, why it is required, why you should have good leadership, non-corrupt, non-partisan, uh, wedded to the law, who does not allow wrong things to be done. A lot of people have come to me, have written to me now because those of father, son who have been beaten up because they did not close their shops in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. Now, this is the manifestation of poor leadership because if the politicians have been posting people as SPs and also having their say in who should be the inspector of police station, then you get a very, very poor standard of policing. That is not the type of policing you are entitled to. You are entitled to have people who will uphold the law, ensure that people who commit crimes are punished, people who don't are not unnecessarily involved. So this is what I mean by police reforms, and you should understand that. I given you a, a general um, eye, bird's eye view, shall we say, of what is happening in the country, why the police is not functioning as it should. It's all because of political control over the processes of government. The politicians would rather like to run the force themselves. I used to discuss this with the home ministers, saying, "What is this? Why don't you wear uniform and sit in your? You wear this uniform and say that you are in charge of the police, and that you will control everything. And they say, what are you talking? But I said, but this is what you are doing. You are posting these officers and you are letting us down very badly because of that. Now you will ask me, what did you do? I said, I followed Mr. Nagarkar, my first boss, his dictates. And I was ready to go out whenever. I don't remember the politicians interfering with me at all because they knew that I did not accept. I remember the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Antule, writing. He sent his secretary wrote to me that I should post a certain person in Kalyan police station. I was then the commissioner of Thane. And I said, well, if I do that, I am not responsible for what happens in Kalyan. And no answer came back because then they knew that I could not be fooled with. But if people want to progress in their career and they think this is the way to progress, just do what the politicians want, well, then nobody gets any justice. Justice will be done according to what the political party in power or certain ministers want. That is not what we are expecting. And this is the real problem with police reform. Police reform does not mean good training, good this, good manners and all that. All that will come automatically if there is a good leader who has the power to control his own force. Like an army general has power to control his officers and men, this kind of control should be given to the police. And they will not be irresponsible. They will be responsible to the minister. And the minister's job is to see that the police does not cross any lines. If they cross lines, they should be dealt with also according to the law. So this is in short what police reforms are. And this is what I wanted to explain to you so that you will go back to the people, go back to your friends, go back to your fellow students, explain this to them, let the word be spread. Because at the moment, when you talk about police reforms, the politicians say, no, the police want more powers. Giving police more powers, nobody wants to give them more powers. Whatever powers they have enough, and they misuse it. When they misuse it, they should be caught and punished. Do they do it? They don't. Why don't they do it? Because they get votes from their constituents, from the people whom they support. And this is not the way to run a security system. Security system should satisfy the people, and that is why I felt I should ask our Shivam to allow me to address the people. I just want the last point. You know that what the politicians accepted from the Supreme Court's ruling on Prakash Singh's case was that there should be a police complaints authority. Now, a case like what happened in Tuticorin should have gone to the police complaints authority. But the police complaints authority in Maharashtra is a disaster, clear disaster. There is a judge who is the chairman who never comes to the court, never. He has never been there. And there is a IPS officer who has taken charge. He does everything. And not a single case has been decided according to what the police complaints authority is supposed to do. They are only interfering in things that they are not supposed to do. And our own interns of PCGT have gone and sat down there in that courtroom and given us these findings. And we are still to publish it. So these are the things that people should understand. I'm very happy to address you. I hope you understood what I said today. It is very important to understand it, that only good officers, there are good officers. And once people know that if they are good and stick to being good, they will be rewarded and they will go up the ladder. Many of them who are on the fence will come and jump on this side. You'll get many more good officers. The ones who are there in Bombay, for example, there are so many good ones. I know them and I keep a watch. And I think it is very important for us to get good, respected, honest officers who are willing to do justice. And that is the thrust of police reforms, and we should all understand it and demand it. When you demand it and the politicians feel they will lose votes, that is the only time they worry. Otherwise, they are not worried about all complaints. They go on merrily trying to ensure that they remain in power. Thank you so much for having me speak to you about police reforms. Shivam,
Thank you, sir. Can we take a few questions from the chat
yeah,
box in YouTube Live?
in fact, I gave half the time for questions, and I would like more and more questions because this is something that should trouble you all. You all are the future citizens. You should trouble you. Are this the type of law and order that you expect? This is the type of police do you expect? You must worry about it. Please, students, do ask.
Mr.
Thank you,
Ribeiro, I
sir.
have a question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if you have a question, please type it in the chat box. Otherwise, every participant will start asking and we won't be able to manage time. So please type your question in the chat box. So there is a question from Rushali in the Zoom chat box. She's asking your take on the Hyderabad police encounters.
Hyderabad police encounters where that after the death of that girl, that of that she was a
Yes, sir. After the gang rape case.
gang rape. I think it was an absolute shame the way it was done. It was done in such a I'll tell you one thing. These encounters are a blot on the police administration. You have encounter specialists. How can there be encounter specialists? How can there be a specialist who knows that something suddenly will happen? Encounter is sudden. How does he know? I mean, there's so many encounters taking place. It's not possible. And so it is a blot. Now, the persons who indulge in it have got a license to kill. And having people in uniform with license to kill is a very dangerous proposition. If you go and see what we call encounter specialists, they are heroes to the people, mainly to the middle class, because our legal system, our judicial system does not give verdicts very quickly, and even if when they give, it's always very often distorted. A very clear case is acquitted, so then they become cynical, and that is what gives these people some sort of license to do that. Now, this particular case in Hyderabad was a clear case where I don't think the police will be able to get out of it. This is what I feel. I mean, they should not, but yeah, it was a shame. That is the
All right,
bottom
sir.
line. Yeah.
There's a question from Aditya Tiwari. He's asking that what measures can we as people, as citizens, take to depoliticize the law enforcement? I think what he means is that how can we depoliticize this issue which you just spoke about?
Yeah, the thrust of my talk was that there should be good leadership. Good leaders should be appointed. We leave it totally to the politician. We should be able to have a voice. If there are people, I mean, they have their choice between good people. They should not have a choice in getting a person who is only going to do their job. So we as people should object that why are we being saddled with a person who is not going to look after our interests. And that very often people don't want to take that risk. But if we build up a sort of movement or a voice against appointment of wrong people, I think we will be able to get somewhere. We can sit down, a lot of people who think like us, and see what we can do to ensure that we get good leaders. Of course, we can't go around accusing people that this fellow is bad and he's a rascal, because he will say, prove it. And it's not easy to prove these things. But I think if we get concerned citizens to make a representation that look, so and so is going to retire, or somebody is retired and now you're going to fill up that post. We think that the following people who are in line, they should be considered. And we know who are the person. People know who are the people who are honest and who are bothered about the safety of their fellow citizens. Yeah, it's a difficult matter, but it should be attempted. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
There is a question on YouTube Live,
Yeah.
and this is about the internal reforms in the police. The question says that often fair investigation is a precursor to fair trial. But how can we ensure that the investigation takes place in a fair manner when there have been so many cases of corruption over there?
Yeah. Corruption is a very big problem from time immemorial, even in the times of the British. So what they did, so what the British did is to have good supervisors. Now you have here the Indian Police Service. They have not gone through the mill. They have not worked at police stations. They have not worked on the streets of the city. They have not investigated cases, but they are trained for management and they have been given all the inputs that are required to make them good supervisors. Now, when I joined service, for 3 years, I was an assistant superintendent of police. That is my first 3 years. And assistant superintendents of police were supposed to go to the scenes of murder, dacoities, rapes, all the big crimes. We had to go immediately, stay there in the villages for days until there was some kind of a possibility of disclosing who the offenders were. And it should be done in a fair manner. And the police who were investigating also knew that this officer is a very straightforward person and they would ensure that the investigation was done properly. I learned now, I mean, now I have retired so many years ago. I retired in the year 1989 at the age of 60. So now I'm told that this is not very rigidly enforced. This is one of the reasons why politicization has ensured that this is not true. And very often cases are done on the basis of who is close to whom, which local leader knows these people, because the local leader knows most of these persons. And if they uh, throw their weight on one side or the other, it is done in that way. It should not be like that. The person who has committed the murder should be charged, and the person who has not should not be unnecessarily roped in. This is how we should ensure that justice is done. And when people know that justice is done, they will respect the police, they will respect the administration. But the administrators, like the politicians, should understand that. And when police start doing the wrong things, then the politicians in power, the party in power also loses a lot of this. I can point out so many cases even today in Delhi, for instance, where wrong people are being charged. The persons who have actually done it are not being even questioned just because they belong to this party and that. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is not how justice should be delivered. Yeah.
So there is a question from Shreya. She's asking that people are often reluctant to approach the police because of the negative perception. Uh, I mean, I agree that this is not a part of a question, but this is something which I also had in my mind, that now, because of their duty in the crisis, people are having a sort of positive image about the police and the kind of role they are playing, during COVID-19. But by and large, their duties are regressive in nature, sir. So how can we ensure that, this negative perception against the police is removed from the mind of the common man, the layman?
You see, the perception that the police sometimes do wrong is definitely there because they do wrong. And they often do wrong because of political interference. Now, this is where a good police leader should step in, and the politician know that they cannot fool around with him, because he is going to do the right thing. If one of his subordinates, and the subordinates are very, very clever. They know exactly which officer wants what. And if the officer they know is in charge, he is the commissioner of police or the DGP, is not a person who is going to allow this and that. They know it, and they usually follow. In police, the leader, because you do all, the drill which is being dinned into you from the time you join. There is a reason for it, that you carry out the orders, but the orders should be correct. If the order is by somebody who is himself corrupt or is wanting to play games because he wants to he has some other stake in it, well, that is where the problems arise. So you have to ensure there are good leaders. And I think we must start building up local leaders of societies, or even in slum areas, who will keep a watch on this, and you will not hesitate to bring to the notice of the authorities that there are people who are not doing the right thing. And if the authorities don't listen because they themselves are involved, then we should take it up as a citizens movement, that this is a wrong thing that they are doing. And that is how we can make our voice heard. PCGT is trying to do just that, bring to the notice of government where things are not as per the law or as per truth, as per conscience. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Due to paucity of time, I request the participants to send their questions, if they have any further questions, to publicconcern@gmail.com. I have put the ID in the chat box, and we will try and forward it to Ribeiro, sir. Thank you. Over to you, Purnima ma'am.
Yes, sir, Ribeiro, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much. And especially, I want to thank you on behalf of our principal, sir, respected principal, Dr. Ajay Patil, sir, our registrar, madam, Asha Patil, madam. They couldn't join. Sir is out for some reason. He couldn't join. But he has specially said thank you to you, sir. Thank you so much again for removing your precious time and guiding us with your valuable knowledge, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there no
Priya?
more?
Yes, Shivam. Okay. Since we have reached the end of today's webinar, I would like to extend a vote of thanks. Thank you so much, Ribeiro, sir, for your valuable insights on the topic of police reforms, which is a burning issue in today's scenario. Um, we are sure that all our participants today have a lot to take back from this webinar. I would also like to thank Dr. Ajay Patil, sir, for his constant support and guidance, without which this event wouldn't have been possible. I would also like to thank Mrs. Asha Patil, ma'am, and Professor Purnima Surve, ma'am, for guiding us at every step. We are also very thankful to Burnish Law Journal for providing us with this online platform for today's event. Lastly, as campus ambassadors, Ayush and I would like to thank Ribeiro sir, Raja sir, Anna ma'am, and Shivam, and everyone at PCGT for giving us this opportunity through the Campus Ambassador program. It has been a unique platform to learn and grow. Finally, I would like to thank each one of you who joined us today and helped us make our last Campus Ambassador event for this year such a successful one. We are right now having our Campus Ambassador applications open, so the students who are from DY Patil as well as from different colleges could apply. I would forward it on the WhatsApp group that we have created. Thank you so much all for joining in today.
Yeah.